Hi everyone, Quiveen here from the comfort of my kitchen. In today's video, we will continue looking ahead into the month of October, but we are going to concentrate on the constellations. So if you watched the previous video, I've already looked through a little bit about where the planets are going to be, the kinds of things that we can see in the sky. But I'm going to concentrate on how the constellations have changed, because I only talk about the constellations occasionally. Looking at the sky here, from the city with the light pollution that we have and this early still a little bit of sunset glow, there's definitely a few constellations visible. We've got the summer triangle, which is an asterism, but if you can see the asterism of the summer triangle, then you've definitely got the constellation Cygnus over here with Deneb. You've got the constellation Altair down here, or the constellation Aquila with the bright star Altair, and up here we have the constellation of Lyra with the bright star Vega. So we've definitely got those three constellations nice and clear, nice and visible. Down here towards the horizon, you might see bits of Sagittarius, but of course anything that's very low to the horizon, if you're in the city or if you're in a valley, those can be blocked from view. Turning around here towards the east, we've got Cassiopeia, nice and big. We've got the square of Pegasus up nice and early, and the constellation of Andromeda. So the Andromeda galaxy must be just over here, even if we don't get to see it from the city. It has to be in that position in the sky. And continuing to turn around towards the north, of course, we've got the Plough or the Big Dipper, pointing up towards the North Star early in the evening. At different times of the year, the Plough will be in a different position around the North Star. So where it is at the moment is kind of down towards the northwest early in the evening. But as we move through the night, of course, that position will change. At the moment, we're mostly seeing the Plough kind of under the North Star and Cassiopeia kind of up and above the North Star in that direction. So just using your eyes, even from the city, even with all of the light pollution, there are a number of constellations visible in the sky. One of the signs of the zodiac must be around here because that's where Saturn is. Saturn is a planet, so it follows the ecliptic across the sky, a very particular line, which is it's pretty much where the sun's equator would be if you stretched it into space. The planets follow the sun's equator. This must be Aquarius. We've got Capricornus there after Sagittarius, and Pisces over here, and then Aries. These are the lines of the constellations, and even with these lines you can definitely see from here in the city we're missing so many stars thanks to light pollution that we are missing entire constellations, and not just small ones. It's almost impossible to see any of the stars in Pisces, which is a pretty big constellation if you're dealing with the light pollution in the city. We can see the shape of Perseus there, and this must be Auriga with Capella. Indeed it is. It has that nice kind of pentagram or pentagonal shape. So bringing up the images, bringing up the pictures, now we can definitely see that there's plenty of constellations in the sky, and indeed that is Aquarius with Saturn. Aquarius doesn't really look, its lines don't really look like the picture it's supposed to create, but Aquarius is between Capricornus and Pisces. Once you know the order of those constellations, even if you don't recognize this line in the sky as Aries, if you know that's Pisces and you know that's Taurus, Aries has to be the one in the middle. And some of the constellations are a bit more recognizable, like Sagittarius. It has a pretty recognizable shape. We also have the constellation of Triangulum just over here. In the same way that Andromeda has the Andromeda galaxy, Triangulum has the Triangulum galaxy. It's another one of our very close neighbors. Moving forward towards morning time, we've got some more planets, which means more of the zodiacal constellations coming into the sky. Mars is there in Gemini and Jupiter is there in Taurus, with Leo coming up just ahead of the sun. I think we might catch a little bit of Virgo before the sun rises as well. Indeed we do. So there comes Virgo. By the end of October, the sun will be at the very end of Virgo. At the moment, things have changed since ancient Greece. But at the moment, if you were born at the end of October, or really any time in October, the sun is in front of Virgo on the day that you are born. Of course, astronomy and astrology, very different things. But in astronomy, that's where the sun actually is at the moment. Looking into the north, we can see the Plough, part of Ursa Major and Ursa Minor there connected to the North Star. We can also see that kind of kid's drawing of a house shape for Cepheus and Cassiopeia, of course, related to the whole story of Perseus and Andromeda, Cepheus, Cassiopeia. I have a whole video on this channel about that story. So we will move back towards the middle of the night. We'll get rid of all of these pictures, and then we will get rid of the light pollution as well. So we're back here, yeah, 9:30, reasonably early in the evening. So we'll get rid of those, and we will push out to the countryside. Here we go. So now that we're in a dark sky, there are loads more stars visible, and that can occasionally make things more difficult. So for example, looking into the summer triangle, turn around a little bit, there's Deneb, and these are the stars in the constellation Cygnus. But there's a lot of other stars up there. It can be easy to get mixed up. Looking up here, these are the stars that are part of Lyra. Just these ones. It's a pretty small constellation. But with so many stars in the sky, it can be easy to get mixed up, and especially if you're looking at fainter constellations. For example, the constellation of Pisces. Yeah, I think it's around here, but it's very hard to tell. With so many stars in the sky, it can be difficult to pick out exactly what ones you're looking for. So looking for particularly recognizable groups like the Hyades there, we know the Hyades are part of Taurus. And if that's Taurus around here, it's very hard to tell. Yeah, that is Aries. The lines, of course, make it a lot easier, but with the lines in the sky, it's also easy to see that they are joining together some of the brighter, more prominent stars. But over here, in certain constellations, it can be hard to tell which stars are included, why certain stars are included and not others. Of course, these lines were unofficial for a very long time. Constellations were kind of an unscientific thing, a colloquial thing. Various different groups around the world, different cultures would all use different lines and make different pictures. And even from place to place, the same pictures could be described using different stars. But they were eventually standardized, official constellations were set, rules were set for which stars are included, which ones count. And even then, there's some odd stuff like this star here. Is it this one? No, maybe it's this one. Some of these stars like Alpheratz, it's counted as Alpha Andromedae, and I believe it's Delta Pegasi. So a few of these stars are almost shared between constellations, even in the modern day. We've got another up there where it's Beta Tauri and Gamma Aurigae, because it's joining those two constellations together. So there are still some strange rules when it comes to the constellations in the sky, but which ones you can see, it does depend on whether or not you're in the countryside or in the city. Of course, some of the fainter constellations will lose all of their stars if you're in the city. But if you're in the countryside, it can take a little bit more practice just to pick out the stars that are important, the ones that actually make up the constellations, especially if you don't have those lines to help you. Like, for example, Gemini over here. The two brightest stars, Pollux and Castor, they're pretty clear. But remembering, even when the lines were just there a minute ago, remembering which stars exactly are part of that constellation, when you have all of these other stars visible as well, that can make things just a little bit trickier. So we will come back to the beginning of the night, and we will turn around to the north. Some constellations, just before we turn around to the north, some constellations, even if they're very small, like Delphinus down here, just because of that very clear kind of rhombus shape, that stands out. And of course, the fact that that shape stands out is part of the reason it was made a constellation. The prominence of these shapes are what made people call them constellations to begin with. There's a reason these individual stars were picked out. They do stand out a little bit from the background, whether it's their shape or their brightness. And we can see up here this kind of ring shape. That's our corona borealis, where the supernova is supposed to happen soon. If it hasn't happened already, of course, we're looking into a little bit into the future here. Maybe this supernova happened at the end of September and it's already gone by the time this day will arrive in October. So turning around to the north here, in a reasonably dark sky, and we'll get things a little bit darker, you can really see the rest of the shape of Ursa Major there, the other stars around the cloud that make the full constellation. And if we look up to the North Star, you can pretty much make out the Little Dipper as well. Those stars are a little brighter and they have that more distinct shape. Bringing up the lines, of course, there's lots more. There's a lot of less famous constellations in this direction. Draco the Dragon, despite being a very big constellation and in a very interesting, well-known part of the sky, it doesn't get as much attention as the Bears do, for example, or Cassiopeia. Being right on the globe of the Milky Way, of course, makes Cassiopeia an interesting one as well. This is Camelopardus, another pretty obscure constellation. Camelopardalis isn't a very big constellation and it's not very well known, but it is up there to be seen. And if you are in a dark sky, get rid of the pictures as well. It does have this sort of triangular shape, but it's near to this fin of Perseus. So for some of these fainter constellations that are difficult to see, for example, trying to find out where Draco goes, well, it passes between Ursa Minor's head and Ursa Major's tail. So Draco must come up through here. Using the more famous constellations, kind of like signposts, can help you find some of the less famous or more difficult to see constellations, even if you're in the city. So to finish up with this look ahead to October's constellations, and of course with 88 constellations in the sky, I don't think I'll ever be able to deal with all of them in just one video, unless that video is very, very long. So looking into the southern sky here as the sun sets, Delphinus is basically invisible. Maybe you can see a couple of the stars there, but this is the summer triangle and Delphinus is just off one side of it. Even if you can't see the constellation, sometimes you can figure out where it is or what constellation is supposed to be where by looking at the more visible constellations. So again, looking at Camelopardalis from the city, maybe there's one of its stars visible there, but it's basically visible. But this thin shape of Perseus is visible, and Camelopardalis is just over from that, so we can use that to kind of fill in the gaps. Here we've got our Ursa Minor, and there's only a couple of bright stars left, so they must be the stars in Draco. It is usually the brighter stars that get made part of these constellations. I do hope that you get a chance to see some of these constellations in the real sky, whether it's from the countryside or from the city. If you enjoyed this video, please do like it, and if you like this kind of content, please do subscribe to my channel, and you're more likely to see more of it. You can also read some of this information on my website, quebeanscontent.ie, and hopefully I'll see you back here next time.